Hold it tight so that noise can't slip.
Oh, where can he be? Oh, where can a little dog go? Oh, where can he be? With his ears cut short and his tail cut long. Oh, where can he be? Oh, where's my little dog gone? Oh, where can he be? With his ears cut oh, where can he be? Oh, where can a little dog go? Oh, where can he be? With his ears cut short and his tail cut long. Oh, where can he be? Oh, where's my little dog gone? Oh, where can he be? With his ears oh, where can he be? Oh, where's my little dog gone? Oh, where can he be? With his ears cut short and his tail cut long. Oh, where can he be?
Excuse me, does this belong to anyone?
Ah, my dog! I don't know. We seem to out of the car park and we can't find anything. Did anyone find the dog? Oh well, it's sitting off around the block and who knows. But anyway, found a few dogs, but they just chased me. But anyway, I'm going to welcome you tonight to Where's God When It Hurts. And sometimes that can be a bit of a hard issue to replace, but we hope you enjoyed the dog thing, but yeah, and you relax. So we'll see you later.
Welcome again to our special event on Where is God When It Hurts. This is your chance to take part in our special event, so if I can ask you all to stand please, we're going to sing a song. Your love keeps following me.
this year. Or you could spend some time with your wife. You know, the one you promised to kiss and cuddle and love and cherish for the rest of our lives. Right? I know what would get you out of bed. See, I knew that would work. Fine then. See if I care. Waste your life away. I'm going to Joanna's.
And you wet your beard.
Good evening. There's a sequel to that, which we'll see in a moment. But at the moment, right now, we are going to take it to an offering. And if you're a visitor here, as the bags come down the aisles and across the rows, if you're a visitor here, just pass it on to the person beside you, right? If you're a visitor here, we don't expect you to put anything in it. So don't feel any pressure to do that. And as that's happening, I'm just going to pray for that offering. Okay? Father, I just want to thank you for all the things that you've given us. I want to thank you for what has been given to us tonight. And of the amount that's given back to you, Lord. And we ask that you would take it, that you would multiply it, and that you would bless it. And bless those who give it. In Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. While it's still happening, we've got a number of announcements. The first one is I have a set of keys here, which were left this morning. Those keys, somebody will recognise those, hopefully. And there's a little amount of money that was with them as well. So if you could just see me afterwards and you can collect that. Secondly, the new building. There's some critical dates I just want to pass on to you. The first one is this, the last day of September, 30th of September. We're expecting that the shell of the new auditorium will be completed. That's not a very long way. And 1 month later, 31st of October, we're expecting that shell will be fitted out inside sufficiently for us to be able to move in there and have our services in there, give us a lot more room. Amen. And on the 1st of November, we are going to have an opening celebration, and I think it's a secret service as well. Okay. So just keep that in mind. We'll continue to remind you of that. The second thing is the GAP. The GAP stands for Girls at Prayer and Play. And on the weekend of June the 19th and 20th, that's a Friday, Saturday, they are having a camp, and that's for ladies. Right?
Men.
No men. No men.
Not even one. Men.
Right. Where is it? Right. No, it's not an outlet. Fourthly, cell leaders, the notes from this morning's session that Gary ran, the notes from his talk this morning, they are available for the cell leaders at the back, outside in the auditorium there after the service. And if you're in a cell and your cell leader is not here, if you could just pick up a set for your cell leader. That's to just help with leading the cells during the week. And just lastly, we just want to, it's not a problem tonight, but we just want to try and keep that doorway, foyer area clear. Especially guys, if you just come in and just make sure you're seated down so that if ladies want to be able to take their babies out, they can do that openly and freely. And sorry, one more thing about the new buildings. In the newsletter that you would have received this morning, that you'll receive next week, there's a prayer list there about the new building and things to pray for. So just a reminder to you for that. And that's all the notices. Now we're going to have a sequel.
Last weekend was sleep. How's your wife? Not too good. She's staying with her sister. Kidding? No. She said until I get my act together, that's where she'll stay. Well, what's the problem? I don't know, I just haven't been feeling right, you know. I do things and I just can't be bothered doing them, you know. And with this restructuring thing, it's just driving me nuts. Just don't know. It's taking its toll.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, I'm going to lose some of my department too.
Same. I just don't know what to say to these guys, eh? I don't even know if my job's safe. What do I say?
I'll let you get on with it. Good luck.
Thanks, mate. Come on, people, come in. Got a lot to discuss. I want to make this short, sweet, to the point. Right. Guess you're all wondering why we call this meeting. Well, the reason is because I know how much you've all been holding out to find out how well we've been doing this year. But before I hand over to Beth, I just want to say thank you for all your efforts you've put in over the past 11 months. Thank you for all the overtime you've done. We really appreciate it. Let's see. I also want to, just really the main thing I called this meeting was to say that with the restructuring, there could be a little bit of change in our department. If there is, I don't think it'll be much, but if it does come our way, I'll be trying my damnedest to make sure that it's very minimal affecting us, okay? Beth, can you take over from here?
Well, after working half the night on the accounts, the results were as we had predicted.
I don't know if I can do this anymore.
Half-yearly figures indicate that we are 3% up on the estimated budget, which works out to a 5% increase for the same time as last year.
And some more good news. If we keep along this line, we can expect our yearly stock turn to reach 7.5%. Kathy, you're on the coalface. How are the sales teams reacting to the changes?
Good. Everybody's happy. No complaint. I don't think there will be any.
Oh, it's very good, guys. Just want to thank you once again. The competition is really feeling the heat, you know. They're starting to cut back. on all spending. So I just congratulate you guys and thank you for all your hard work. I really, really mean it. Back to work, okay? Thanks, guys. Mean it, thanks.
Suddenly find no sense at all. Am I losing my mind? So much anger, so much rage, completely locked up in life's cage. Why am I suddenly a wimp and so weak? What is happening? Am I really a freak? What is this place? Is it hell? Is this my destiny, this padded cell? I make it my mission to engage in war. Who is my opponent? I kick a hole in the door. I'm constantly asking, where is the key? Where is the key to the door that will set me free? Silently I cry. No one could understand. Complete isolation from the entire land. Then there's an opening and a light filters in. I'm getting it together, I think, with a grin. Suddenly my world is positive and bright. So much good to do from morning till night. As I reflect on the last round, I recover and I rest. And I hold on to all I can in anticipation of the next.
'cause everybody cries and everybody hurts sometimes. Sometimes everything is wrong. Now it's time to sing along when the days are not so long. Hold on if you feel like letting go. If you think you've had too much of this life, well, hang on. 'Cause everybody hurts. Take comfort in your prayers. Everybody hurts. Don't throw in your hand. Hold on. Don't throw in your hand. Feel like giving no. No, 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 you're not alone. If you're on your own in this life and the days and nights are long, when you think you've had too much of this life to hang on, well, everybody hurts sometimes.
chisels I've told, carving idols of stone that have crumbled like sand beneath the waves. I recklessly built all my dreams in the sand just to watch them all wash away. Through another day, another trial, another chance to reconcile to one who sees past all I see. And reaching out my weary hand, I pray that you'd understand you're the only one who's faithful to me. All the pennies I've wasted in my wishing well I have thrown like stones to the sea. I have cast my lots to rot, my God searched endlessly for a faith to be faithful to me. Through another day, another trial, another chance to reconcile to one who sees past all I see. And reaching out my weary hand, I pray that you'd understand you're the only one who's faithful to me. You're the only one who's faithful to me.
It can twist up your inner soul. It can paralyze you with fear. Make us not want to trust one another. Leave us feeling confused and maybe even depressed. It can make us not want to take risks in life with relationships, with work, with ordinary things, and even with some of the greatest opportunities we might face. It can even make us feel God doesn't care when things hurt. What was sung before, it's so true. Every one of us faces hurt at some time. Sometimes we don't realise the impact of that hurt, and sometimes we try to put it aside. Sometimes when we look back, it can seem funny. The things that frightened us and hurt us. I had a situation when I was younger. We used to live in Blenheim. And I had a friend, and I think during the time I lived in Blenheim, I think I was the only friend of one young man who was a mate. I think in the time we were there, in 2 years, I think I was the only one that was able to enter his house. I wanted to be there because he had a train set. It was unreal, you know, it was a huge train set. And as a young man, I just wanted to play with his train set. And I went over there several times and we played with his train set, but there was always something that seemed to be holding him back. We'd go into the train set room, and as he walked in, he'd sort of look in and say, "Hold it, I'll just check." He'd look in and then we'd go in. Everything seemed all right. Till one day I remember his hesitation when I first went to the door, and he said, "Come on, let's go." And he said, "Hold it, let me just check." And he opened the door a little bit and he goes, "No!" And he yells out his mother's name. And I didn't know what happened until he opened the door and this beautiful train set that his dad had bought him with points and hills, and they'd been building this whole thing. It had everything. Everything child could want in the train set. It was all over the place. Track was ripped up, hills were destroyed, lights had been broken. The thing was a mess. A real mess. It was then, after this numerous times of visiting his home, I found out why he had wanted to check in the train room before we went in. I don't think he ever intended me seeing that, but I saw it and I stood there stunned. See, what had happened, his mum had been through some terrible, terrible things in her life, and I don't fully understand what it was at the time. I remember little bits of what he said, but it just didn't make sense. And she was hurting so bad that she used to attack other things, and his train set was one of them. I guess on the more humorous side, for the next few weeks we had plenty to do. But at the time I remember standing in that doorway, looking over his shoulder and the sheer devastation that stood before us. It may not seem significant for some of us as adults, but as a child, seeing this absolute mess, it just seemed like the world had come to an end in train set world. It's the way it was. Sometimes our personal problems cause us to hurt others, often the ones we love. But what are the things that cause this kind of hurt? What are those things? Well, it comes into all sorts of categories, and I don't think any way that any person reacts is all the same as any other person. I remember when I found out that I was a child that was born a little earlier than probably was, well, I know it wasn't just probably, than was planned. And I was not young then. I'd always wondered why I didn't know when my parents' anniversaries occurred. I also didn't know their age. I didn't get along too well with my dad, however, I'm really quite close to my dad now, and that's changed, so I want to say that, but I couldn't understand. The trouble was, I guess, I brought a lot of stress into their life. I was one of those little Wrigley's that managed to survive, and hence, behold, baby Colville, here on the scene. Sometimes it's other things that cause those kinds of problems, and I would just want to cover some of the things that cause hurt and some categories. Grief. Grief, one of the most powerful of all forms of hurt. It can be grief from loneliness. It can be caused because the parents live in the country and they don't live in a city, and the child's geared towards being with lots of other people. Their personality type is one that loves to be with others. Or loneliness because the family doesn't get along. I don't know how many of you have experienced real tension in your family, but what's it like when you see one brother not able to talk to another? What's it like when you see a sister being nasty to her brother or her sister? What's it like? What causes the kind of tension that we face? Grief, caused because of death sometimes. Everybody who has somebody die will grieve. I remember some years ago, not here but in another situation, where a person who had deeply hurt the family, deeply hurt his wife, he died out of town, in another place. You know, the ironic thing was that that family went through tremendous grief about losing him, and yet he'd gone several years earlier. We don't always understand the complexities of it. It's a kind of loss. Sometimes I've seen people who've been angry because they felt betrayed. They've said, how dare that person die right now? Well, I guess they didn't plan it. But it's happened. But it doesn't stop the grief, it doesn't stop the pain, it doesn't stop the crises that a person is facing. And so they feel like there's some kind of betrayal. And grief in itself, or any kind of betrayal, can be expressed in grief, in the form of grief. A person can experience betrayal by a close friend or somebody even maybe not so close. And they can go through incredible grief because they feel as if somebody has told on them, somebody has taken what was theirs and given it to someone else. Or somebody has left them hurt and wounded. And their betrayal, as they have pretended to be a friend, or maybe they've been a friend, and they've betrayed. I've had that happen. One of my closest friends some years ago betrayed me in a way that I couldn't understand. You know, it's by the fact I functioned pretty well. I missed that person for 5 years before I really came to a place where I thought, well, I guess there's not much else I can do. I tried everything, and it's a grief. Then there's a second area of stress, the subject of stress. Covered in emotional stress, physical stress, of course the emotional covers the psychological side. And stress can come about because of overwork, or working, or trying to operate in a place or a way in which we're not designed to operate. I remember some years ago when I was in the railways, we had a guy who turned up at work and he was really bright, and we all knew he was bright. I mean, he knew lots. He knew stuff we didn't know. One day he shared with us, he says, one of the guys said, well, what made you come here? You're so bright. He said to us, well, I went to university, but I kind of felt really stressed out by that, and I didn't feel like this could be my life working just with my academic mind. I wanted to do something with my hands. Here was this guy who's really bright, who had recognised that he wasn't feeling designed to do what he was expected to do by his family. He'd achieved at a high level, but he decided that he didn't need that kind of stress, and so he decided to opt out of university and disappoint his parents and take on a trade. Well, in those days, the way that society viewed that, if you're a tradesman, you were lower than a guy who's in the office. Well, I always used to think about that seriously, and I reckon the guy that built the office is better than the guy who sits in it, eh? Not really, but you know what I mean. Officers aren't there without the practical guy. We've got to keep perspective on things and get it right. We don't need to do things that we're not designed to do. The third area I want to cover is sickness. Sometimes sickness is created by circumstances or history, and can I say that sometimes sickness is brought on by the fact that a person continues to do something that they shouldn't have done for years and years, and they end up sick from it. Doctors will often tell you, if you ask them honestly, I have a good friend who's a doctor, he's a skin specialist, and he says very upfront that often people come to him with allergies. He said it's not an allergy problem, it's a personal problem, it's a sickness of the mind. It's being created because of some of the things they're doing, living in deception, trying to fool everybody, and they end up sick. But sometimes the sickness comes because of an imbalance in the body. Maybe it's an eating imbalance, and I wouldn't call it sickness, but it could become so. I have a friend who died. He's grossly overweight, and the doctors actually told his wife he wasn't to eat a certain substance, which he loved. And he loved this food. And so his wife didn't quite understand what the doctor meant. So she got the substance. It was a vegetable that some of you know well. And the doctor said, look, you must never eat taro. No more taro. It's killing you. And his wife sat there and thought, well, if I can't give him taro, he loves taro, I must find some way of feeding him. And so she mulied the taro. And without her realising it, what it did, it actually made the taro even more dangerous to his body. And eventually, it's what actually killed him, because his body couldn't lose weight. So sickness can come in all sorts of ways. And in his case, the sickness had come because he worked for a battery company. And he'd had fumes come in his body, and the company had not been responsible in evacuating the fumes from the factory. And it hadn't affected a number of the workers with him, but 2 of the workers eventually suffered serious disease, sickness, and were hurt, feeling really hurt. No compensation could pay for it. I said to him one day, what compensation has the company made? And he says, couldn't pay for it. Couldn't pay for it. It's true, isn't it? So hurt can come because of sickness. It can come for no identifiable reason, or it can come because of some identifiable reason. And we can feel hurt that we're sick. And I can never get out of this. I know if we're suffering from some of the diseases that people have, or some of the sicknesses that people have, we can wonder why. Why have I got this? I remember an occasion when I got shingles in the right side of my face, and it all popped out, and I lost all the skin on this side and all through here in the back of my head, laying in absolute pain. At the time, I'd been told I had a brain hemorrhage originally, and then I discovered it was shingles, and I lay in a hospital bed thinking, when the shingles finally came out, I thought, great, it's not a brain hemorrhage, I've only got shingles. Boy, if I'd known how much pain I was going to face, I can tell you right now, I would have probably opted for the brain hemorrhage. Probably would have preferred to die. All sorts of things, not necessarily our fault. But then the next one, I want to call a cause of hurt in our lives is our own foolishness. You know, how often did we do foolish things when we were younger we still before today? How often did we do it? I don't know about you, but I remember some years ago climbing a mountain. The 12 of us started out, 2 of us made it to the top. It's called Mount Baldy and has a shingle shallow sliding down. And we ran to the top. Oh, we climbed to the top rather, couldn't run. There's no way. And we really struggled. You know, you climb up a few paces and the shingle will slide and you slip back down again. And you climb up and sometimes you felt like you were going forward 10 paces and back 20. And it literally happened on occasion. We'd slide away down, we'd fight our way up, and when we thought we got to the crest, we'd find that we hadn't got the crest at all. The top of the mountain was just over that crest. And we finally got to the top and we took this photo of the 2 of us. And my friend had a timer camera, sat it on a rock, and we had taken a special pack of cards up on top. And we sat there and we played poker. And we took a photo of ourselves playing poker on the top of Mount Baldy. Well, we came down off that mountain, we rode the shingle slides down at an incredible speed. We got down the bottom and our adrenaline was pumping, and the guys said they'd all rested after their attempt on the mountain, they'd given up, and they said, we thought we'd go and climb that little mountain over there. And I remember my friend and myself, we looked at that mountain and we thought, that's not even a mountain. You know what we did? Shoals. We ran up it, just to show them how good we were. We ran that mountain, I remember running to the top of that mountain, we ran back and they were only part way up. We thought it was great, you know, we were heroes. That night we were due to catch the train home from Cass. I remember we had to carry our packs on our backs, and I remember carrying a big crate of milk bottles, empty milk bottles across to the train, and it was a long walk. And we got about 3/4 of the way across and I collapsed. They had to half carry me to the train. I got on the train and I was so sick. I was a real sorry sight. That train journey was the worst train journey I've ever had, and I love riding on a train. Whose fault was it? It was mine. And I lay on that train feeling miserable. They wanted to sing. I wanted them to shut up. And we're like that, aren't we? I just find that sometimes that some of the stupid things I do, and I guess you are a little bit the same as me. Maybe you're not so bad, or maybe worse than I am. I don't know. Some of the things we can do can be our own foolishness and end up with us feeling hurt. It can end up with us feeling physically hurt or emotionally hurt. When we're young men or women, we can take a look at another person of the opposite sex, and we can finally pluck up the courage and go and ask, and they can say, you jerk, I don't want to go out with you. Boy, that can hurt. I didn't have that happen to me. But then I was really careful who I asked. Remember last week I told you the story about the guy who took a risk and he went up and asked the most beautiful girl in the class, and he was the most gawky guy, gangly legs, spread his bloody face, and he ended up marrying her. And he's the guy who took the right risk, wasn't he? Tell you what, it could have just as easily gone the other way. Well, it did. Remember what happened? In the drama last week, for those who were here, she went wham! Still got married. Still got married. Might have cost him a bit of pain, but he got there. But I told her, she could have gone whang and said, don't you come near me again, you jerk. It would have left him hurt. The trouble is that we can be foolish and not even take a risk. And that can hurt us just as badly. You know, sometimes our own foolishness will shut our mouths and cause us not to attempt things, cause us not to try things, cause us not to take risks. And we can end up feeling hurt. I know sometimes there's been people that I've worked with in the past who have been really keen on marrying somebody else, but they never approached them. And somebody else has got there first. I thought, if only I had asked them, I could have married them. It's probably true. In fact, sometimes I've even seen it where if the other person I knew wanted to ask had asked, the girl probably would have opted for that one rather than that one. When I married Pauline, I proposed to her and it took her 2 weeks to say yes to me. Tell you what, it's the only time I've had a problem with biting my fingernails. I'm really controlled on that. I'm good with my fingernails, you know. I'd probably do better than most women. You know, I don't bite them at that. But that 2 weeks, I really did. I chewed the things away. I couldn't believe what I was doing to myself. I chewed them away. Boy, if I'd known what she was thinking, I probably would have chewed my fingers as well, because you know what she was thinking? She's trying to decide whether she wanted to marry me, but there was another guy she had her eyes on. You know? If I'd known, I probably would have chewed my fingers. If she had said no, I would have felt hurt. But she said yes. And I don't think that was her own foolishness. You see, most of us do stupid things that hurt us. There used to be an old saying about kicking against the goads. Probably most of you don't know what that means, but it's kind of like going and bashing your head against a brick wall, same thing. Or kicking a brick wall, you know, it doesn't do your toes any lot of good. It hurts. And sometimes we do that, maybe not physically, but we hurt ourselves by doing foolish, stupid, irrational things. We get caught doing something we shouldn't have been doing. I got a phone call this afternoon from a mother who was distraught. She needed to phone somebody. She doesn't live in Porirua area, she lives way up north. She just knew that this son of hers had a respect for me and maybe I might be able to help. She rang up and says, I don't understand why he's done this. He's just been locked in prison. I don't know why he's done this. And I was trying to prepare this message. I thought, I know why. I know why. Because this guy, the thing that he keeps doing is he keeps hurting himself through foolish things. I've lived and talked and breathed with this guy over the years. I've shared with him. Now and again he comes to see me. Every time he comes to see me, he's got another problem. And I've actually said to him, why don't you stop hurting yourself? He doesn't know. Now his mum's been told that a psychologist is not sure whether he's actually lost his mind. It's a tough world. Fancy happening this afternoon, eh? Another one is the whole issue of identity crisis. We actually some years ago got asked to create this evil city. There were 70 of us in my staff and we were given a budget. And in this evil city, it was meant to be an autocratic city, similar to some of the autocratic countries overseas. We had government and health and media and social welfare, all the Myanmar society. We even had a squatters area. I remember Rosella and Gail, two of our people, going with some rubbish tins and tipping rubbish over people in the squatter areas just to make it real for them. They had to come and live there, and it was a simulation, like a game. But one of the things that threw people when they entered was that we gave them a computer ID card. And on that ID card, we broke the norms in society and identified people by different means to normal. What we did is we had a little picture on the card. One of the things we did, a little picture of a series of noses. One nose which was really shaped a bit like that, sort of like this sort of shape. We called the normal nose. The nose that's shaped like most of us have got, we called the strange nose or something like that. We had another couple of shapes, I think about another 3 shapes of noses on there, and we had some ridiculous names for them, for the ordinary shaped noses. And the ones that we normally consider ordinary, we called them ugly, and the ones that normally considered ugly, we called the best. Right? You wouldn't believe the impact that had on people. They looked at that and they did not like being labelled that way. And yet the irony, you know what the irony is? That's exactly how we identify ourselves. You know, you ask somebody to describe another person, and say, oh, they're the guy. That's the guy with the close eyes and the big nose and the funny shaped lips. Huh? Who said it's funny shaped lips and who says big nose? I mean, a big nose might be quite standard in God's eyes, don't you think? We go through these identity crises. When I was young, I was short. All my mates were big. I had to go and play rugby. Well, I thought I'd play rugby. Thought I was going to be a good rugby player. I was going to be an All Black. Most guys want to be an All Black. The only trouble was, the problem I had, I was so short and so light that I had to play with kids who were about 4 or 5 years younger than me. And because that's the way it worked in those days, because it worked on the sort of weight sort of thing. And so I had to go and play rugby with these little kids, and I didn't like being a little kid because I was big boy, and these guys were little kids. It was a bit of an identity crisis for me as a young fella, and we all have them. Some people have an identity crisis because of a problem they have that's different to being short, being tall. I remember Johanna once when she had to go in the hospital for a check-up on something. She was laying in the x-ray room and she was looking at the staff as they came in, and this doctor came in, no kidding, this x-ray guy, he was tall. He was really tall. And all Johanna did with these other 2 staff there, she just looked at him from his feet to his top, and she made some comment, I can't recall what it was, and the whole staff and all of us cracked up laughing. That poor guy, every time he went through a doorway, he didn't just walk through a doorway. When he went through a doorway, he had to bend over to go through a doorway. He's that tall. No kidding. And I could imagine having an identity crisis. I sat there looking at him and I thought, gee, here's Pauline. And I used to be short, I no longer am, so I felt all right about that. Here's Pauline. And here's this guy that was really the long and the short of it. You know? But we consider ourselves, if we're not short or long, that we're all right, we're ordinary, we don't need an identity crisis. But there's something there, you know. Guys who play locks, what do you notice about locks? Cabbage ears, somebody at the back said. Right? Cabbage ears. Because they scrunch their ears up. So some guys try to put some tape on them to hold them down so that they won't get scrunched. I guess the reason they do it is because they don't want to have an identity crisis. And they don't want to get, in Wellington it'd be really dangerous to have 2 cricket ears because of wind. Canterbury players, of course, wouldn't have to worry at all, would they? See, the size, the shape, all those things that we are create hurt for some people. Some people it doesn't matter. But there are some people who will find, no matter what shape or size they are, they'll think it's wrong. My daughter really reckons I'm the wrong shape. I should have been born without this. I told her it's because I'm born like it. My back curves in, so this pokes out. I guess I have to think that way because if I really thought the way she does, I'd realise that I was fat. And I could have a real identity crisis about it. But you know what? If I don't have that, I'm not enjoying much of my wife's cooking. Then there's a couple other areas I want to touch on. The area of curses. Things that cause hurts are curses sometimes. Sometimes it happens directly and we can see them. You know, a child's always told, oh, you're a little brat. And then we wonder why they grow up being a little brat. Or you're headstrong. You wonder why they keep being headstrong. Or you're a sissy. We wonder why they cry. Or sometimes parents can be terribly cruel to the children, but the worst thing is that they can end up cursing the children. Some nicknames. Years ago I used to be called a nickname that I refused to tell anybody here. Because it wasn't very complimentary. But one of the things the guys used to always have me on about, because I was so little and had really skinny legs, the guys used to come up to me and say, Gary, you're lucky, you know. And I'd say, why am I lucky? And often, you just every now and then catch me off guard. Why am I lucky? I say, look at my legs, and they say, lucky your legs don't snap off and poke you up the backside. The first few times it was funny, but after a few more times it hurt. I desperately wanted to get a bit fatter, but my mother always told me that I was made with hollow legs and I was never going to get fat. Well, it proved her wrong, eh? Curses can come in all sorts of little ways. Sometimes we can curse a child by the way we dress them. I've had a friend who died just, was it this year or last year? Can't remember now what date it was. My friend Lloyd, his mother used to dress him when he was young in clothes that were 20 years out of date. And Lloyd talked with me one day and he said to me, you know, the impact that had on me, Gary, was incredible. The impact that had on me was absolutely incredible. And I needed to be a person who wanted to be free from that, but I couldn't. And he said, as I got older, I carried that image with me for years. And it made him become so driven to prove himself that in the end it caused him to have a breakdown. And that was the thing he could identify back to. He was quite clear about it. Lloyd eventually recovered from his breakdown. It was a terrible journey. But he was hurt because of that imaging. He was hurt because of what was going wrong there. And then there's the other area of curse, and it's spiritual. Some of you won't probably have experienced this or know about this, but some cursing can be so powerful when it's spiritual, it's unreal. I have seen somebody that was cursed some years ago that was told, you will never recover, and they got very, very sick. I saw another person, I believe was a spiritual curse, where they were healed. They were actually healed from a crippling disease. And somebody made a negative statement and said to that person, you shouldn't be walking around. You have no right to start walking now. And the person sat back down in a wheelchair and to this day has never gotten up again out of it. Real hurt, real pain, real impact. The whole issue of feeling like you're a failure. The whole issue of feeling distraught and destroyed is here. So they're the main areas. So what are the consequences of those kinds of hurts? And you may recognise some of these things in your own life. I certainly, as I went through the list, I thought about some of the things that have happened in my life in the past. Self-abuse. Things like eating disorders, bulimic people who don't hold their food down because they're concerned they're going to become too fat. People who have communication problems, they are so self-abusive that they aren't willing to make an effort to communicate because they have been so badly hurt. Others who abuse other people through lust, through domination. They can dominate through sexual activity, or by silence, or by absolute intensity. You will do what I say because I'm your husband, and some people will even say, and the Bible says you should obey me. Well, just this last week I was dealing with a situation. Somebody had inferred that that was the way a Christian should live. I want to assure you, if you've ever heard that story, that that is the most hurtful thing you could ever say to a person. One of the most hurtful. In actual fact, the Bible doesn't have that perspective at all. It talks about two people working together in love. And it talks about consideration of both parties towards both parties. But that kind of abuse is pretty common in our society. The treatment of silence. Some people don't think they're doing wrong when they're being silent to their partner. I want to say that that is a very cruel form of abuse, and it's a very powerful way of hurting. But what it does more than anything, it tells me when I know that somebody's treating somebody else with silence, I know that that person is hurting badly and is not dealing with it appropriately. I know it quite clearly, I see it so often. Anger. Aggression in terms of anger. Someone said, "You shut your mouth!" Pull the fists. Want to do destructive things. Or in terms of anger, some people get really self-persecuting. I don't know whether you think this is very real or not, but there are some people who will cause themselves to suffer. When we were kids, we used to do this stupid thing. I don't know whether you remember doing it. Do you remember doing this? Biting your finger? Yep. Who remembers it? Then after you bit your finger, you pull like that, right? And you pull out for a long time, and then you try and straighten your finger out. That is a simple illustration of the way that some people treat themselves. They don't just do their finger like that. They do all sorts of stupid things. They know. And we know when we're angry. Sometimes we think it's good because we haven't thrown that anger at somebody else, but we've internalized it so badly, it's leaving us deeply hurt. And the damage it'll do to our relationships is absolutely incredible. We'll feel like we're all knotted up inside. We'll feel like our gut is being destroyed. In fact, it is often the cause of physical sickness. Then another consequence is the whole sense of failure. Some people go for failure by intention. You know, we intend to fail just to prove somebody else wrong or right. We're so badly hurt, we fail. I know one of the things that happened with me, I was a bit rebellious as a child. Most of you wouldn't have guessed that, but I was. One of the things I used to do was I used to fail to prove the kind of pain that was inside me. I was so angry. I kept getting told, "Cole, you'll never pass these exams." Or sometimes it would be a family member saying the same thing. The interesting thing was what happened for me. The year I became a Christian in August. In October, the end of October, the beginning of November, I sat my trade exams. And a teacher came up to me. I always remember his name. It started with Black. I won't tell you the rest in case you meet the person. And it was kind of black. He said, "Cole, you'll never pass this exam. You're not doing enough work." Well, I'd become a Christian. I hadn't been long a Christian. And I decided I could do some work, and I was trying. I was at least trying. Oh, I'm going to pass just to prove this guy wrong. just to prove them wrong. That was a different attitude to what I'd had before. You see, I would fail just to prove them right. Because I was angry at them. And I did. I passed to prove them wrong. Got top of New Zealand, 98%. You know, an irony happened that year. And that did hurt me. They, every year, for the person who got the top maths mark, a calculus mark, in the New Zealand Railways, they'd award you with a toolbox full of tools. That was the only year they didn't award it. And I was angry at those guys for a while. It took me a while to deal with that issue internally. I thought, how dare they? But you see, they didn't think I deserved it. I think that's what it was. Sometimes your anger can grow, and I really felt like going and punching their lights out. I think I might have done that if I hadn't have been a Christian by then. It's the way we handle things sometimes. So we get into failure things. The other area of failure is that we can get to the point where we will fail. Isn't that agreed? Amen? We will fail. But the problem is what we do with that failure is the thing. And see, one of the things we often will do is, and we often can do, is we can overemphasize that failure. I've said time and time again to the people here, I don't mind if a person fails, sometimes, as long as we learn from it. But most often when we fail, we get down on ourselves. We don't always let it on to other people, but you know, I used to do this to myself all the time. I used to really get down on myself. If I failed, you know, I used to beat up on myself internally. It's not good. You can't afford to do that. But it is a consequence of hurt usually. And then the next area is a whole area of depression. Depression where we can become withdrawn. Some people are affected with schizophrenia or other different kinds of complaints. And some of that's medical and some of it's not. I don't want to try and go into a description of this, but I remember some years ago receiving a letter from a doctor whose son had been schizophrenic, and he wrote a letter to pastors and he said, hey, I want you guys to do something as pastors. I want you, if you meet people who are facing schizophrenia, not to presume that it's demonic, because it's not always. Sometimes it can be, but not always. Depression can mean we end up withdrawn in ourselves, and we may deny that we're feeling depressed, but one of the things that happens is that we get down on ourselves, and we allow the words of others to so impact us, it'll change the very things we do in life when we know that's not the best thing for us. Then rejection. We reject ourselves and we reject others. I'm no good, we end up saying. I'm no good. I'm no good. Or we think that that person's hurt me so badly, I will never speak to them again. I will never give help to them again. I will never do those kinds of things. Then the last two are drivenness, where we're being unhealthy for others. We're driving so hard, we're unhealthy to ourselves and also to others. And then the last one I want to touch on tonight is the whole area of demotivation. We become demotivated, we can't work, we can't seem to pick ourselves up. We lose motivation. And if you look closer, you'll be able to identify that somewhere there's been a hurt that has caused that. And it may be a hurt you've inflicted on yourself, but most often it'll be because you've taken on something that others have allowed you to take on or given to you. So people are not always aware of these consequences of their own hurt. They tend to not realise that the things they're doing are related to the things that have happened to them. You know the story, some of you may know the story about the guy and his husband and wife who were having difficulties in their marriage. And so the wife went along to the psychologist, who was a good counsellor. And she went along and she said to the counsellor, having terrible trouble with my husband. Every time I go do something, it's always wrong. And I say good morning to him, and he grunts at me. And in the end I find out that I end up being nasty back to him. So counsellor said to her very wisely, he said, how about every time he says something, you say, yes, dear. And regularly tell him you love him. She said, well, I don't know whether I can do that. But he said, look, I think it's imperative. If you want to really save your marriage, you're going to have to do this. And she said, but I don't want him to be over me. And he said, no. He said, if you're willing to do this, in the end, it'll work out. So she thought, well, maybe he's given me good counsel, so she'd give it a try. So the next day came up, and it happened to be a Saturday. She gets up in the morning a little late, and she says to her husband, darling, I'd like to make breakfast in bed for you. Would you like breakfast in bed? She said, I love you, darling. And he said, well, I would like breakfast. I want it in bed. She said, yes, dear. So I want a continental. She said, yes, dear. And in a continental breakfast, I want some croissants. I want them cooked just right, just warm, and I want a little bit of tomato and some cheese in them. I'd like 2 sausages, and I'd like some beans with my breakfast. And he said, I'd like 2 eggs. I'd like 1 fried and 1 boiled. She said, yes, dear. Yes, dear. Yes, dear. So she went out to the kitchen saying, yes, dear. And she cooked his breakfast, and she laid it out on a beautiful tray. She brought it back into him, and sat it in front of him, and he looked at the breakfast, and he shook his head. He said, you fried the wrong blimmin' egg. Oh. There's always some people like that in society. You better reinterpret it then. You see, sometimes it doesn't matter what we do. There are people who are never going to change very easily. The best thing she could have done at that point is probably thrown it in his face. No. Only kidding. Only kidding. See, some people are just like that. They just don't, they're so badly hurt, they just can't be considerate and loving and can't show real appreciation. We all have weaknesses. The problems people face are often caused by the tendency in their lives to allow the hurts that they have to be so predominant in their lives that everything they do revolves around the hurts rather than the positive things. And if you look at their lives, usually the positive things far outweigh the negative. But they don't see that. They don't see it. And sometimes we get like that. So I want to finish by asking the question, where is God in it all? Because we said tonight that we were going to talk about where is God when it hurts. And the verse that was read out used the very same words that Jesus used when he was about to die on the cross. And my God, why have you forsaken me? Why have you left me alone? That's what it means. Why aren't you here for me right now? The psalmist who wrote that in Psalm 22 was really struggling with some big issues and really felt like God had deserted him. Often we perceive God as an emergency package. You know, it's like the Minties adverts. When you get in need, yeah, have a Minty. I'm kind of amused by that advert because when I had a Minty, it tore a filling out of my tooth. You know, that's the way we often treat God. But I want to introduce you to the God I know. There's been times when I've felt that he's kind of left me alone. But usually that's when I've sort of been stuffing up badly. There are times when I've been really suffering in life, and you know, I think as a pastor I probably have a pretty fair right, if you want to count credibility, to be able to expect God to do me a good deal. But I haven't always had the best deal either. You know, I've suffered shingles. I've suffered some incredible pain that other people have caused me at times, both physical and emotional. In the years that I've been a Christian, it hasn't been easy. Some people give the impression that being a Christian is easy. Hey, it takes more guts to be a Christian than to slide down a rubber mat with everybody else.
Amen.
Somebody recently discovered that. But the things I have discovered about God, he loves to be here for me. he does love to be here for me, even when sometimes I thought he wasn't hanging around too much. I've had to rethink that. And secondly, he wants my love. That's amazing. Because when I first came to know him, I didn't think I was really very lovely and I could love very well. But I discovered he wants my love. And he wants it in a way that is quite unique. He wants a relationship with me that's more meaningful than any other relationship I have, including my wife. Because we as humans are not perfect, but he is, and he wants the very best for me. He can give it. Another thing I've discovered is that he wants to listen to me. But the thing that really amazes me is that he's taken me into account in the equation. It's not just for him. I think one of the most powerful things he wants from me is he wants to have me in community with him and with other people. Healthy community. A community where everyone experiences the joy and the hard times together. But because we're living them together, it takes the really hard points right out, and it means I share more joy because I'm sharing in everybody else's joy. That's what real community is all about, and that's the real community he wants. But when thinking about that, I kind of sat and pondered this other community. Wow. I remember when our oldest daughter was a little baby, and Pauline and I were living in community, literally. At one point in our time, not long after Adele came out of hospital, we were living, there were about 30 people staying there. It was a big conference. I was in a community in Auckland. We lived on each other's doorsteps, literally. I mean, all the rooms were down the hallway, and any noise you made, the other person could hear. You know one of the neat things about living in community? It's near impossible to have a decent fight. You know? You know darn well if you have a decent fight and you get out of control, some lovely brother or sister's going to come along and say, "How's it going, Gary?" They didn't say they heard it, but you know they did, you know. Man, that's hard living in community. We lived in community for several years, we know. And I remember we had Adele, as I said, and she was only a little wee tot. She's 3 pound old when she was born, little tot. And she was squawking her head off in community. I mean, when I talk about squawking her head off, it's not talking like she does sometimes. It's and it didn't stop, I'm not kidding. So we went to the doctor and we got the stuff to try and take away the wind in the tummy because we figured it was that, you know. So every baby that cries has a wind stuck in there, you know, an indigestion problem, but it's a baby kind of indigestion. So you get this mixture and you pour it down their throats. It didn't solve a thing. So we got told all these different tricks. Everybody had this different advice what to do. Shove her over your shoulder and pat it back, tip her upside down and shake. You know, any trick in the book that anybody can think of, they try to get rid of it. Well, you try living in a community with a little baby. I remember how hard it was, you know, facing the morning after my baby had been crying all night, and going out and looking at everybody's eyes to see how many people looked like they hadn't slept, you know. When you saw them wandering around like this, you saw them there, you know? Living in community was really hard. I remember smacking a little hand. It was only just come out of hospital. Well, it really wasn't a smack. I picked the hand up. Hand was so little, it was like this going, "You naughty, naughty girl, now stop it." Trying not to laugh. And she goes, and she cried, just a little different cry. And I'm glad to say that she really never cried virtually at all after that as a baby, which is wonderful. It was really good. But living in community, you know the good things about living in community work for us is it helped stabilise our marriage. We were in Tasmania, it helped stabilise our marriage. It helped us face issues. And instead of going off at my wife like I'd modelled from my own family situation, and you know, if you get a problem, you know how you deal with it as a husband? You shut up! I'm not doing the dishes, that's your job. I mow the lawn and I fix the car, and you've got to do the dishes, and you've got to do the potatoes, and I'm not... And Pauline would say to me, "But when I met you at that camp, you were peeling all them potatoes for everybody." I says, "Yeah, but that's when everybody else going, I don't mind helping them. But in the house, I meant to do this and you meant to do that." And we had these raging arguments. But you try having that argument in community. Some dear brother or sister's going to come up, put their arm around you and say, hey, I love you. They don't say it in those words always, they just say, hey, you all right today? Well, that's the question, because they knew darn well that yesterday you weren't. So you've got to rethink things. So I think it's a really loving thing that God's done. He's put us in community like this. He's invited us to be part of his community. There's a whole lot of people dive out. A whole lot of people say, no, I can be a Christian and not live in community. Hey, can I tell you something? A Christian is a person who lives in community of God's people. It's as clear as that. Nobody can live outside of community. In fact, God even says that if you're neglecting to live in that community, if you're neglecting to fellowship, then you're in big trouble with him, basically. Because he's not only made you to live in community, but he's equipped you to live in and help the others, each other's hurts. And to pick one another up and to strengthen one another. And not just help them with their hurts, but help them with their strengths and make them really strong. I appreciate that. And everybody else who does here can say amen. Amen. You see? See ya. It'll turn the negatives into positives. That's what he intended from that community for us. So I want to say that developing healthy relationships, healthy community, always will hold us accountable. It stops us becoming possessive, stops us being controlling, and it stops us allowing hurt to continue if the community is healthy. And let me say this very carefully. Some Christian communities and some communities in society are not healthy. They're destructive. And it's not meant to be. I mean, God has a pretty strong word to say about people who like that. He doesn't like it. But in community, you can receive some benefits. So where's God in it all? Well, the benefits we receive is that we can talk to God, we can talk to God with each other. God will do what we ask him to do if there's two or more of us gathered together to ask him. He tells us that. So if you think you can do it on your own, hard luck. Because he told us where there's two or more gathered together, then he can do it. So you've got to think about that. It's the value of community. God is here for us, but not as a minty or a lifesaver, but as a life. There's a big difference. So what I want to say to you, if you really want to know what it's like and ask where God is when it hurts, often it's because we've left God outside, over here. And when it hurts, we've boxed ourselves in so badly, he hasn't got a show getting in because we've locked him out. And he wants to invite us tonight to say, God, I want to be a person who's going to have a positive aspect in my life. I want to be a person who can live in your community. I want to be a person who can be freed from my past hurts and curses that have been brought against me. I want to be a person who will be a changed person who lives a life that's real and alive and free. And I'd like to invite you tonight to join me in a prayer that I'm going to just pray right now. And at the end of it, I'm going to say, and all the people said, and you can say, if you want to agree, amen, because that means I agree. That's what it means. Or you can yell out, I agree, if you want to do it differently. All right? But if you'd like to join me in this prayer, and then at the end, I'll give you the opportunity to say amen. Father God, we come here tonight, and sometimes we have been hurt and we've hurt others. And we want you to be there for them and here for us. Lord, we know that sometimes we've really basically stuffed up pretty badly. Some of the things we've done. We haven't given you all the credit we should have, and we haven't asked you for help when we should have. We haven't really loved you, and we really haven't known your love the way that you want us to. And we want to know your love at a far deeper level. Jesus, when you died on a cross, you cried out to the Father because you felt deserted, but you felt deserted because of the wrong things we'd done, not because of anything you did. And so we want to say tonight, we're sorry for the times we've hurt you and we've hurt other people and we've allowed hurt to exist in our own lives. And we want to invite you tonight not to be a minty or a lifesaver for us. We want you to be in our lives, to live the life with us So we want to ask you tonight to do that. We give you permission to move in our lives, to show us where our hurts are, to free us and enable us to live a new life. So we ask you to help us in Jesus' mighty name. And all the people said? Amen. And all the people said? Amen. I heard some saying I agree. Wasn't that great? Amen. Hey, let's show the team real appreciation for all the work they've done.